Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to talk about my half-yearly reading stats. Earlier in the year, people were really interested in my quarterly stats, and so I've decided to make it a series this year. I don't typically talk heavily about my stats anymore, mostly because I think reading is a deeply personal thing and that people read as much as they can or they need to, and whether you read one book a year or whether you read 600 books a year, it actually doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to anyone what you do as a reader. But some people were kind of interested, and so for this year I just thought it would be something that I can put out there, mostly because I'm also counting everything that I do read, so that includes all of the picture books and things that I read at work. I have fallen off on tracking that just a fraction in the last month, but the last month has been absolutely hectic and borderline nightmarish with the Amazing Readathon. So I've done the best I can. I've got all of the books that I have been reading for all of the readathons and all of the months, but I think I may have missed a couple of kids' books at some point. We're just going to have to go with the flow and also wait for the ambulance to go past. If you haven't seen my first video, I will leave it linked on the screen where I talked about my quarterly stats. I have a list of things that I keep track of via my reading spreadsheet, via my reading journal, and I'm just going to go through them. Then I'm also going to go through my 6-month check-in with my TBR bingo board from hell. This was a reading challenge that was created by Leanne from Literary Diversions. This has honestly been the thing that has single-handedly kept me on track with some random goals that I selected at the start of the year. But what I'm going to talk about is the goals as they currently stand at the end of June, but I'm also then going to talk about how I'm going to adjust those goals for the second half of the year. While I want some achievable goals, and I have plenty of those, I also want some things that I can work towards. So we're going to see how those are adapted for the second half of the year. So we're going to start off with my books that I have DNF'd so far this year. I always start off with this number because these books do not count towards any other stats except for the DNF stat. Doesn't matter how far I get into the book, unless I literally probably get to like 90% of the book. I'm not counting it in any other reading stat because I DNF pretty quickly. So I have DNF'd 45 books so far this year. In terms of the total number of books I have read up until the end of June, I have read 440 books. That is a total of 84,084 pages. That's a really nice number. I didn't realize that. I typed it out and I did not pay attention to the fact that is an awesome number. So far this year, I have reread 44 books. Most of them are Kate Daniels books, and most of the rereads happened in June. I've read 239 physical books, 154 ebooks, and 47 immersive or audiobook experiences. So I count audiobook and immersive reading in the same bracket. It doesn't matter to me how I do it. If I listen to anything on audio, whether I'm physically reading the book at the same time or just listening to it, it just counts in this category. In terms of my readership categories that I've read 134 kids titles, 37 middle grade titles, 15 young adult titles, 252 adult titles. Then we have different types of representation in books. So I have read 120 queer books. I have read 106 BIPOC authors, 19 of whom were also Australian, Indigenous or Torres Strait Islander authors. I have read 179 books by Australian authors and 72 books that feature either chronic illness representation, disability representation, or neurodiverse representation. Sometimes not everything in that category is explicitly stated on page, so if I can read between the lines and understand it, absolutely I will include it. If it's something that I suspect but I also don't get confirmation of in the text, I don't include it just because I don't want to make assumptions. My most read genre is unsurprisingly romance at 194 of my total books read, and also my most read subgenre is contemporary romance with 81 books. The next highest subgenre of romance is hockey romance at 33 books read this year. For those who are interested, the second highest most read genre is fiction, and that's typically what I characterize most of the picture books that I read that are fictional text, is just plain fiction. I don't try and classify them as fantasy or adventure or things like that. I think it's a little bit easier to break down those distinctions in novels than it is in picture books, which are usually like 32 pages long. I've also been tracking my KU and my Libby savings this year. So through Kindle Unlimited, I have so far saved $233.26. That is taking into account all of the books I've read minus the subscription cost per month, which for me is $13.99 Australian, I think. And then my Libby savings, which is just my local library, is $595.05. And that doesn't include any fees. So yay. All right, then we move into the updates for my TBR bingo board from hell. So these are my 6 monthly updates of where I am with all of the challenges. So for my read 12 audiobook square, I hit 45 books this month, which means also hit my 3rd star. For my read 50% of my pre-2024 owned physical TBR, I'm currently sitting at 42.6%. That includes read and DNF'd titles. So if I've DNF'd something and cleared it from my collection, it's counting towards that percentage because it's no longer part of the collection of things that I need to read. I got my first star for my 24 rereads challenge. I'm currently sitting at 33 read middle grade titles for the year. So that means I have hit my middle grade challenge twice already. I haven't quite hit the third star. I did reach my goal of reading 80% of my monthly set TBR. That does mean I get another star. This one is staying. This is like the goal that I set myself, so I don't set unachievable TBRs every month. Whatever I set, I have to try and read the majority of it. And yes, I do hit it every month, but that's because I need a win, but I also need an incentive. For my challenge to read 12 series by the end of the year, I have finished my 10th, well, finished is a loose word because I DNF'd a 10th series. I am no longer going to be reading the Dangerous Tides Kickstarter books. I tried to read a couple of them during the Amazing Readathon and just didn't vibe with them. So I'm just going to put them aside. I'm not getting rid of them, but I'm also not going to be counting them in any stats around physical books or owned books or things like that. In a couple of months, I'll decide whether or not I want to keep them and give them another shot at some point. But that does mean that I now only have 2 incomplete series, which includes Lana Paherchek's Game of the Gods series and also the rest of the Demonic Messes and Other Annoyances series by LL Frost. I have read 14 nonfiction titles. I have absolutely no change to the Friends Choose My TBR challenge. I've completed that twice, and I've also managed to clear my NetGalley TBR at 7 books. So that is completely done and finished. So what does that mean for the TBR challenge moving forward? So what I've decided to do is I've gone back through and I've basically either upped some of the limits of my challenges or I have reset them to something else entirely. This is the new bingo board. I'm looking forward to it for the second half of the year. And the way that it's been updated is the audiobook challenge is now 75 books. We're starting at 45 audiobooks read. So I'm keeping all of the totals for the things that I've just changed the numbers for. I'm wiping the stars off. When I hit 75, that will now be the new star starting point. I've also upped my pre-2024 TBR to 75%. I'm starting from 42.6% for that one as well. I'm also adding in to the square next to it the challenge to read 80% of my 2024 physical owned TBR. The reason this one is higher than the previous one is because I've already calculated how much I've read from this new books coming in TBR. I'm starting at 71%, so I need this one to be upped. But I didn't want it to be so completely unmanageable because I do really need to tackle that pre-2024 TBR as well. So we're going to aim for 80%, and then if I hit that, then I can increase that number at some point during the year. I've raised my middle grade titles to 50, and that means I'm starting on 33. So that gives me, 17 more middle grade titles to read between now and the end of the year. My read 80% of my monthly TBR is staying the same, like I said before. This is just a challenge that is really useful for me to keep my TBRs manageable, but also to still have some fun and have some quick wins. My series challenge square is going to remain at 12 series until I hit it. So when I finish those last 2 series, I have 6 other series in the background waiting to be added to it. Those series include completing the Elliott Security series by Evie Mitchell. I have 1 book left on that called Bleeding Edge. I want to finish Eden Finley's Famous series, and I have 3 books left there, Spotlight, Fandom, and Encore. I want to finish the Mary Gentry series by Laurel K. Hamilton. I'm doing a video series on this. I'm currently up to book 5, so I have Mistral's Kiss, Alika Frost, Swallowing Darkness, Divine Misdemeanors, and A Shiver of Light left to read in this series. I want to finish my reread of the Song of the Lioness Quartet by Tamara Pierce. So I have In the Hands of the Goddess, The Woman Who Rides Like a Man, and Lioness Rampant to read. These are fairly quick reads, so I'm not worried about those. I would like to complete the Boundlands series by Elsie Winters, which includes Seduction of a Psychopomp, which is the last book that I need to read in that series. If I complete all of those, then my next one is going to be completing the Bold Brew series, which was an interconnected universe of stories written by various authors that are all queer stories. So I have books 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10 left to read in the series. So they're all interconnected standalone, so you don't have to read them in order. But there's Perfect Matcher, Vanilla Steamer, Order Up, Silky Smooth, Fair Trade, Extra Whip, and Double Shot. So I would like to complete those hopefully before the end of the year. I've also raised my nonfiction to 20 nonfiction titles for the year. Fingers crossed. We'll see how that goes. We are starting at 14. I've changed the last 2 squares now to completely different prompts, and that's just to give me a little bit of incentive to read other things. Need to freshen up, need to change pace. I have a challenge to read 2 non-romance books per month, and those have to be either middle grade, young adult, or adult titles that are different genres to romance. That's just the way that I want to track it. And then I also want to read 100% of my Rare 2023 TBR. Now this one links very closely to my pre-2024 owned physical TBR because I tendered Rare in 2023. If nothing else, I want to clear all of the books from that Rare haul from my TBR by the end of the year. So I currently have read 75.9% of that TBR. So I think the 100% is achievable, especially since it's part of my usual reset is to choose an author or a book from that TBR anyway. All right, so that is my first half of the reading stats and my updated reading challenge information for 2024. I'm looking forward to seeing how this helps or assists me with my reading. And yeah, we'll see how we go. So as always, feel free to have a chat to me about anything down below. If you're freaking out about the number of books I read, keep in mind over 100 of those were children's picture books. There's a reason why these numbers blow out. And that was the point of this year, was to really see what my actual reading count is when I take into account everything that I read for work. If you want to let me know that you're here but you don't leave a comment, feel free to leave any kind of data or graph emoji down below. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you're on the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.